Well, hello! It's time for another exciting episode of Pens in Use. This is the show where I talk about the fountain pens and inks that I've been using throughout the week. So let's dive into it. If videos like this interest you, where I talk about fountain pens both new and old, and at all price points, I would invite you to subscribe. And just out of curiosity, what do you like to do when you visit a big city? Let us know down in the comments. I obviously am going to talk a little bit more about that and, about the experience of meeting another fountain pen person in real life. So let's take a look at the pens. Alright, so I just filmed the intro to that video without any video. Just audio. So let's try it again. From left to right, I have my Wanderlust, Lamy 25P, which you'll see has had some surgery, Parker Sonnet, pen that you bought for me, the Platinum Izumo, Pelikan 400NN, nice 1950s pen, another probably 60s pen here, Kaweco 101, V101, TWSBI Draco, modern pen, almost out of ink, and finally another 1970s deal, Sheaffer 330. As always, I'll be doing my writing samples in this cognitive surplus notebook. Not to be gross or anything, but now that I've screwed up the intro, I am sweating. Alright, so the Wanderlust is a nice pen. It's designed, this is the Antelope Canyon design. Antelope Canyon is a very narrow canyon that you can only visit with a guide because of the danger of flash flooding there and the difficulty of escaping. It's somewhere on the Navajo Reservation in northern Arizona, and you have probably seen pictures of it. So, I was really thrilled with this pen, and now that I've shown its review, I thought it was time to ink it up again. So I have a medium nib in this pen, and the ink in it is another one of those donated by ODE. This is a Kaweco Sunrise Orange. I was kind of surprised when I realized how much orange I'm using this week. But what the hey? Orange is a nice happy color. Aren't you glad I picked it? Ha 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 ha. Punny. So, I won't say that this orange is anything special to recommend it. Not a bad orange. It's not garish and horrible. It's just, I don't see anything special. So far out of these, I think the two I've liked have been their palm green and their summer purple. My next pen got some surgery on it for long complicated reasons that you don't care about. I happen to have an oblique medium Lamy 2000 nib laying around and decided to put it in this pen because they're the same, and I will be publishing the video on that maybe next week. So, oblique nib just means it's kind of slanted. Yeah. And I found night and day difference, which again I will get into in that video. Night and day difference between the nib I had in it and this nib. And hey, one was an extra fine steel nib, one is a gold oblique medium nib, so what do you expect? The ink in this is Krishna. Let me just double check the spelling. Palasa, which is an Indian ink. One of those samples I was sent long ago. So this is a little bit more garish type of orange. Brighter, less subdued. Kind of like a hunting vest or something if there's hunting where you live. And of course, there's an oblique it is meant to be held at an angle like this. You know, the effect is subtle, but I like it. My next pen does have an oblique nib available, it's just not in it right now. This is my Parker Sonnet steel nib version. They've recently refreshed the design on this batch of pens. Of course, this classic red one is still available, but they have some newer designs that are a little more updated looking, let's say. This one is Krishna. Believe it or not, Orange Blossom. It's an iron gall ink, and I've been wanting to do an iron gall video. I just haven't yet. I don't really know why. But I do have a bunch of pen videos filmed. So maybe. We'll see. You know, when I get a day off or two this fall, that might be something fun since I'll already have reviews and videos in the bag. Okay, like I said, you bought this pen for me. This is the Platinum. Oh, wow, the lighting is horrible. I obviously forgot a setting when I started filming this, but this is the... Okay, let's just temporarily dial up the exposure so you can appreciate this, and then I'll have to turn it down for the writing sample. Maybe a little more. There we go. Because this is a design worth appreciating. A little bit of dust on it. So, anyway, Platinum Izumo. And now we'll dial down the exposure so we can see the writing. Alright, so Platinum Izumo. This pen basically does not bang around with the other pens. This gets its own little pen kimono. So this is a Platinum Izumo with a coarse cursive italic nib. The ink in it is Birmingham pens. Ooh, let's see if we can squeeze the word Birmingham in here. You know, it's a very broad nib. Twilight. And of course, cursive italic, you can already tell kind of the difference there. It's much wider than it is tall. And more crisp than a stub would be. I prefer cursive italics to stub nibs and music nibs, to be honest. I like this pen, I like this nib. I didn't think this ink worked the best in it just seemed too light. But maybe Waterfront Dusk would turn out well in it. My Pelikan 400 NN. The Pelikan 400 is still around, it just, you know, it's called an M400 and it's a lot more expensive than what I paid for this. So let's see if I can take Pier's ideas. So I'm just trying to kiss the paper. I think this is an extra fine nib. We'll go with that. And the ink in it is apparently no longer around. Elixir inks. River Safari. So whoever it was sent me those samples. Thank you. I will enjoy them, but I guess I won't be buying any ink bottles because it's no longer possible. You know, I can't help but think the fountain pen ink industry must be a difficult one to break into. People expect a rainbow of colors. and expect properties are sometimes very difficult to do and often contradictory. And you're pretty much working in small batches. So, the new companies that have made a go of inks, like Noodlers, whatever you think of their inks, you got to respect them. So this pen went about a month or more just kicking around in my bag without being used, and as you saw last week, it started right up like a champ. So this is the Kaweco. Trying to remember my Pier Gustafson thing. V101. Has a, I think, extra fine. Yep, extra fine nib in it. Whoops, I missed. That was my fault, not the pen's fault. And the ink in it is Pelikan 4001 Violet. Maybe not the most exciting purple, but it's decent. I heard some interesting things when I mentioned Violet. I totally forgot to ask him about that. And he's an artist, I'm not. But basically what I heard is the Violet tends to have more blue in it than regular purples. So, take that for what it's worth. A while ago I reviewed the TWSBI Draco. I have refilled it. It is now, almost empty. So broad nib. The ink in it is Bungubox. Sweet potato purple. So that's just a very nice purple, and I was sent a sample of this ink and I ended up buying one. It is the single most expensive bottle of ink I own. Totally not worth it. And yet I really like the color. But I won't be buying any more Bungubox ink. Well, right now I'm not buying any ink, so there is that. And finally, school starts soon. I'll be inking up the Lamy 2000, but for now, I wanted a pen that could just get me through the next couple of weeks. So this is my Sheaffer 330 from the 1970s. Has a nice inlaid nib. Steel nib. I think it's a fine or an extra fine. I think it says right there, I just can't read it. Doesn't say. What I thought was it identifying itself, it just says USA kind of right here on the nib. So apparently made in the USA. So I'm going to go with fine. The ink in it is Pelikan 4001 Brilliant Black. Looks like more of a gray to me, but whatever. This isn't usually the pen I use it in, but I will say what I discovered one year, I forgot to bring my Lamy 2000 on the first day of school, but I had this with me inked up. So this became my daily writer pen. It's actually a good pen. Doesn't look like much. It's from the 1970s. I don't think it cost very much in its day, but it is a good pen to write with. So those are the pens and inks I've been using this week. So I noticed my white balance is off on this camera. I don't want to refilm it, so you're just going to have to deal with yellow squirrel. because it's set for daylight or something. Because I took photographs outdoors with this the last time I used it. But anyway, I got to visit Mr. Pier Gustafson of the world-famous Pier Gustafson test in Minneapolis. Those of you who follow his channel know that he's actually based out of Boston, but he has family in Minneapolis, so that's how we got to meet, because Boston would be a little bit of a stretch for me this year. Maybe when the Delta variant goes away, I'll get braver. But what was really fun about this, Mr. Gustafson and I have talked. We've done a few videos together. We've obviously talked in private on Skype and things, and on the phone without it being a public video and things. So I knew him a bit. So it was kind of fun to meet somebody in real life. Now, we were both traveling, so neither of us really had our pen collections, but one thing I thought was very fun is he always has a pot, because he doesn't wear t-shirts too much as far as I can tell. He's always got a couple of pens in his pocket, and of course they're vintage pens. I was kind of surprised. I thought he would like my vintage Aurora 88, because it's a good pen. That really doesn't help the white balance situation, but it makes me brighter. The Aurora 88 is a good pen. I was sure he would like it. I was kind of surprised that he liked my Kaweco Sport, which isn't in this video today, but it is inked up. But yeah, he mostly does vintage pens, and unlike me, he's more of an artist, so he draws and sketches with them, whereas I write words and occasionally do a small drawing of something. So it's just a very different style of using fountain pens. One thing he felt is that I write a lot more heavily than he does. That was interesting. In Pens in Use, you saw that I tried to lighten up the pressure a couple of times, But anyway, it was a fun trip with a couple of fun things. I will say, because I don't have any visuals for it, I've got my little card left, visited the Bell Museum. We had planned one other museum, but it was closed. I will confess I'm still leery about going places with lots of people around. So, that was a little uncomfortable. But a very nice natural history museum, and I enjoyed the bug displays in the main floor. I didn't take pictures there because I consider it, it's their displays. I just felt weird taking pictures of their displays, so I didn't. But there's a giant mastodon there. There's a giant prehistoric beaver who could probably fell a whole forest by himself. A lot of interesting things, a lot about the evolution, a bit about climate, the geology, the species. It's a very well done museum, and I like that it's small enough. You can do it in a couple of hours. Whereas, hey, let's visit the Smithsonian today. No, that's like a months-long thing to visit all the museums in the Smithsonian. So I liked that. See, what else could I say intelligently? Okay, driving in Minneapolis. Okay, so yeah, driving in Minneapolis. I'm trying to think of an adjective to describe it. The one I can come up with starts with the letter F, and it's not really nice to say on this channel. It has 4 letters in it, and if you don't know what adjective that is, I'm not going to tell you because you're too young to know. But yeah, it is very different from driving in rural North Dakota. Yeah, I know people say, but squirrel, didn't you grow up in Pennsylvania? And I'll be like, yeah, but it was rural Pennsylvania, so it's not really all that different from North Dakota. It's just, a couple more trees and a couple more hills. So, yeah, that's way outside my comfort zone. And, I will concede, yeah, the merging traffic kind of freaks me out. But, the driving downtown where you've got red lights and all that, that's not too freaky, except for the I don't know where the heck I'm going part. That's kind of freaky. So I am glad I had a driver. And he brought his Boston driving to Minneapolis, which was kind of interesting. But I find Minneapolis drivers kind of intimidating anyway, because okay, true story from back when I used to drive home to Pennsylvania to visit my parents. The drivers in Chicago are nicer than the drivers in Minneapolis. I was always more terrified going through Minneapolis and St. Paul than I ever was in Chicago. And that's saying something, because Chicago's a hell of a lot bigger. But I feel like in Chicago, they're like, ooh, North Dakota license, let's give him some room. In Minneapolis, they're like, North Dakota license, dumbass redneck, let's get him. So, yeah. I'd rather drive in Chicago than Minneapolis. So Pier did send me into Minneapolis through what he called small towns. If you consider a town of 13,000 or 30,000 to be a small town, yeah, they were small towns, but definitely a very different world from mine. But as I discovered as I was going in, apparently the getting into Minneapolis is a little more difficult. Getting out, I won't say it was fun, but I did it. So Pier did send me some directions on how to get from North Dakota to Minneapolis. So, yeah, you can see them here. I like this little squirrel mobile. And there were some more maps about specifically how to get to the house. He does his, it's his father's house, is in suburbia, sort of in Minneapolis. And I got lost. I could not quite make out the street names and such on the maps he sent me. So I was going by his written directions, and they didn't quite match the reality, because what to me was a turn left is not what he saw as a turn left. So I ended up stopping by this water tank and asking for help. Luckily I had his phone number, and he was able to guide me a lot closer. So yeah, I would probably still be looking for his house if it weren't for his help. In respect, I'm going to hide exactly where he was, but he was kind enough to put a little sign up at the end of the driveway, so I knew I was at the right house. And we ended up eating supper there. We drove to an Indian restaurant, which I've never eaten at an Indian restaurant. I discovered that dal is much better if it's spicy, because the way I had made it, because I did try making it once, it was just too sweet. So spicy dal is good. But in the process of all that, we ended up kind of destroying the cable to the dash cam. So I don't have any footage of driving around Minneapolis, which probably may not have had anyway. But I was able to pick up a new cable for the dash cam before I left. So that's how I was able to get some of this footage. So if you follow Pier's channel, you know that he is in the process with his brothers of clearing out the family home. They're going to keep the lake home, but they're not going to keep the home in suburban Minneapolis. And and they had a flood this winter, so the house is kind of in an uproar, as you may have seen in the background of my pens in use with Pier. It's just kind of a mess. But I enjoyed getting to know him. His brother was staying at the house, and so I got to know his brother really pretty well. His brother is actually a pretty good cook, does a lot of things that I never would think of. And then I met his other brother. We went sailing one night, and that was probably the highlight of the trip, but I'm getting ahead of myself. It was also kind of interesting to see Pier's creative process. Now, you all know me that right now I am looking at a notebook, and it doesn't have the words, but it has an outline of important points to hit. Pier is more freeform. If you've followed his channel, he's gotten into doing live streams where, whatever happens is based on whoever shows up, and that really freaks me out and makes me nervous. But I got to be a part of a couple of his live streams like that, and it was interesting. It's a different way of doing YouTube than me, but that's the style that he does and works for him. Um, so we did some of that. We definitely did some looking at each other's pens. I got to try some of his. He got to try some of mine. Some of it we did live on his channel. I'll try to remember to put the links to the videos related to my visit there down in the video description if you want to check them out. But, the important thing is, he looked at how I write. He said I have a heavy hand, which I probably do. Parker Vector was my introduction to fountain pens. Later on, I got a Cross Century 2, a Parker Frontier, and my first introduction to the Flex world was a Noodler's pen. So yeah, I probably do have a heavy hand, and I've never been one that minds using a ballpoint. I mean, I'd prefer to use a fountain pen, but ballpoints, hey, what the heck? They write. And number 2 pencil is like second place to a fountain pen in my world. So yeah. So I went into Minneapolis with very few expectations. I hoped somebody who was native there would have some ideas what to do. And he did. He took me to the Mill Ruins Park, which is along the Mississippi River. And it used to be the mill district in Minneapolis, which is where all the flour mills and so on were. And then later on, he took me. Actually, I shouldn't say later on, because that was actually a very good morning. I wandered a lot. I hiked a lot more than I thought I would, if you can call that hiking. It was all paved, but I enjoyed it very much. And he sketched. He is an artist. That's his thing. I'll photograph. I'm not much of a sketcher. What he likes to do is he'll sketch it out with basically with black ink, and then he'll use a water brush to kind of meld things together, and it's very stylized. My whole thing of art, if I do art, is it's either got to be realistic or obviously a cartoon and or slash diagram. I don't do the more abstract version like he does, but we're different people, so that was fun. We had planned. There's a museum there. It's in the old General Mills mill that burned down, but the outside of it is still alive. Still there. So they built a museum inside that shell, but it was all closed for construction, so we didn't get to do that. And he was hoping to take me through the Guthrie Theater, which I think I have a former student who worked there, but that was closed too. So we just kind of wandered the park. Well, I wandered the park. He mostly stayed in one area and sketched. And then he took me downtown. We went to a used bookstore because he knew I liked those, but I had to tell him on the next couple of days, no, let's do no more used bookstores. I only bought one book the whole time because it's summer. I'm a teacher. I'm trying to save money. So yeah, I think I could have spent a lot of money there, but I didn't. Um, but anyway, then we stopped at what was it called? Oh, a watch repairman. And it was one of those really cool businesses, which I wish I would have asked if I could like take a picture of inside the store. But a man who's in his like in his late 60s, early 70s, who he repairs watches or else evaluates them and sends them off to be repaired. He sells older watches. Every square inch of his store is full of watches, and it was just a very fascinating place. And yeah, he gave me a couple souvenirs of my visit. I will admit I got to see a used bookstore in the city. That you don't find them so much where I live. I got to see a very interesting watch repair slash sales shop, which is also something you don't see very often where I live. So I got to see a rather unique business in downtown Minneapolis. The owner of the business gave me this kind of as a souvenir. So let's see if I can remember how to open it. Okay. So this is a little business card. The art on it is actually by the world famous Pier Gustafson. So Marshall Firster. He actually does work on watches. So there's his business address and stuff. And I guess his business is called American Vintage. Quite an interesting shop. I've never been in a watch shop before. So, kind of a cool little souvenir. I imagine he doesn't hand those out to everybody because that looks like an expensive business card to make. And then the other thing, he had a watch there that these things, one of those had broken off. So he turned it into sort of a hangy watch. I don't know watches. Let's turn up the exposure just a bit so you can actually see this. So I don't know watches. I know that's another collecting rabbit hole you can go down if you're into that kind of thing. But the brand is Waltham. I really can't read the bottom of that, but I'll probably be able to when I edit the video. Wind-up watch. And anyway, so one of those had broken off. The other one he filed off very neatly. So, and he put a band on it. So, and then this is the back. So it's probably one of those things that's just wandered around his shop, but he's never been able to figure out how to sell it. And so he found a way to get rid of it. So, very fun. And a shop I never would have visited if I hadn't had a local guide along. So, also fun. Just mowing his lawn if you hear that. But the next day we went into St. Paul. They have a wonderful park. It's very thin, but it's along the river, kind of between the highway and the river. So a lot of road noise while you're there, but it's a very interesting park. And I enjoyed seeing the bridges, especially the lift bridge that's there, which apparently still gets about 5 trains a day. So wow. And I've got a whole video on that whole park. But loved that. But I think the highlight of the trip was Thursday night. Pier's brothers own a sailboat, and they go sailing on Lake Minnetonka. And I was careful not to show the boat or the brothers, but I showed a little bit of scenery from sailing. There are a lot of McMansions around Lake Minnetonka, and you know, architecture is something I would have loved to have gone into if I hadn't become a teacher. And they don't meet my approval. But anyway, the important thing is the sailboat. I was allowed to steer it, you know, with help, a lot of help, on the way back, and that was a fun experience. You know, sailing is just so quiet compared to other modes of travel. There's no motor, it's just the wind. And, you know, I want to go from there to there, but you can't. You got to tack back and forth. And it was just very, very interesting. Also, when you get to shore, you don't just shut off the motor and say, okay, let's go home. No. You got all kinds of putting stuff away. But this was made extra eerie because there was a lot of smoke in the air, thanks to the forest fires out west. And you could smell them too. So at times you couldn't really see the shore. And we were kind of slow because Pier's brother wanted us to see the seagulls, which apparently like to land in the middle of the lake and kind of huddle together during the night. And so he wanted us to see that. So we got back in the dark, and that was a really interesting experience. I don't know how to really explain it. I had been steering the sailboat at that point, so you know I don't have video footage of any of that. Pier took a couple photographs of me steering and looking super awkward, but you know, the less said about that, the better. But yeah, I can see why sailing gets in people's blood, because that was fascinating, and that's something I would happily do again. And and we got home late. I wasted time the next morning because I really didn't want to deal with rush hour traffic, but yeah, I left a little before noon and got home here a little after 9. I did stop and grocery shop in Dickinson, but and of course I gained an hour because I was heading west to my time zone. Because Minneapolis is central, I'm in mountain time, so I get an extra hour. But yeah, I'm really glad I did this trip, and I'm really glad I got to meet another fountain pen person who looks at fountain pens in a totally different way than me. I'm not really a shopper, so I'm glad we got there are parks and other things in cities that you can do. When I go to a city near here, I've got my list. I might go to a used bookstore, like if I go to Rapid City or Bismarck for fun. But yeah, they're not all-day trips. I have had enough after a couple of hours, so... but I think there are a lot of things to do, and I liked, being spread out over multiple days. Got to try several different types of food. Got to explore different environments. And I just found it very interesting. So, and definitely the whole driving. I am so glad I had somebody else to do it for me, because yipe. Especially when you don't know where you're going. The merging and stuff and stoplights, I can do it. I have stoplights especially. I'm might be a little uncomfortable, especially with the high-speed merging with very small areas to do it in. But the downtown streets, trying to find your way, and while there's construction and trying to get on the right street, a little intimidating. So, anyway, I'm grateful to him for giving me the chance. So, anyway, if videos like this interest you, where I talk about fountain pens both new and old and at all price points, I'd invite you to subscribe. And hey, what do you like to do when you go to the city? Are you a shopper? Do you like to go to the parks or museums? Do you enjoy just walking the city streets? Or maybe you like driving around the city. Who knows? I'm sure there's those people too. Or something I didn't even think of. Let us know down in the comments. Well, thank you for watching. And thank you to Mr. Gustafson for making me feel welcome in a city that I've never really dared to penetrate. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.